$99.4 trillion. $99.4 trillion of empty promises are being made to all of us by our government. Now this is the product of politicians from all political parties doing this. No one party is to blame for this. It took us many years to get into this problem. Both political parties are a part of it. It's going to take us a long time to get out of it. But the point I'm trying to make here is, every year we kick the can down the road, we go over $10 trillion deeper in the hole. What this means is, we would have to come up with about $100 trillion today. I mean, our entire economy is about $14 trillion. We'd have to come up with $100 trillion, invested at treasury rates, just so government can keep funding the promises it's making to current Americans. My mother's generation, mine, and my kids. Retirees, workers, and their children. So we decided to do something about it. We decided that knowing this is coming, knowing the debt crisis would wreak economic havoc on us, it would put us back into a real tailspin. We got to do something about it. So here's what we basically propose to do. We put out a budget and we passed it. And there are 4 basic things we're trying to achieve in this budget. It's fairly simple, but it's worth repeating. Number 1, you got to grow the economy. You've got to get people back to work. It doesn't help with revenues when people are out of work collecting unemployment. It works when people are collecting paychecks and paying taxes. So there's a lot of things we propose to do in here to get us back to work. Number 1, clean up our tax system. It's riddled full of loopholes. It's not working. And so we agree with the thrust of the President's Bipartisan Fiscal Commission, which is clean out all the tax shelters and lower tax rates on everybody. Give us a flatter, fairer, simpler tax system that's more internationally competitive to create jobs. We also say drill for oil in our own country, create jobs, and lower our dependence on foreign oil. So there's a lot of things we're doing here to try and create jobs. Number 2, strengthen the social safety net. I think we've reached a consensus, a good one, in this country, that we ought to have a safety net to catch people who slip through the cracks. A safety net to help people when they're down on their luck, when they're on hard times, and a safety net to help people who can't help themselves. But we want to make sure that the safety net is geared toward not keeping people on welfare, but getting them off welfare back on their feet in the lives of self-sufficiency. And so we need to retool the safety net so it works for the 21st century. The safety net right now is going bankrupt. It's spending at unsustainable rates. There are a number of things we can reform in here, but we pick the ideas that have worked. Welfare reform in the 1990s worked very successfully, but it only reformed one of the dozens of different federal welfare programs. We want to reform the other ones. We also propose to do things like streamline all the different job training programs, consolidate them into career scholarships so people, if they're in an industry that went away or they lost their job, can go back to school, learn a skill, get a trade, go to Gateway, go to MATC, go to Whitewater or Parkside, so they can actually get job training and get back into a good career. You got to fix the safety net. The third thing, and this is also something I would argue we have a consensus, we have a consensus that we ought to have health and retirement security in this country. But the programs that provide these are themselves going bankrupt. The programs that provide these are themselves are the leading driver of the debt in the future, so we've got to fix these. And I'll say more about that in a moment. And the fourth thing, it's kind of obvious, but it's worth repeating, is let's pay off our debt. I mean, let's fulfill the legacy of this country where each generation takes care of its challenges so the next generation is better off. We know for a fact that the next generation is not going to have a better standard of living. We know that they're going to have this crushing burden of debt, so let's pay it off. So here's basically what we say. Number 1, we're saying bring spending back down to where it historically has been since World War II. The President keeps spending about a fifth higher than it's ever been on the average, and it keeps going. So we cut spending by about $6.2 trillion off his budget. Number 2, I showed you this chart of debt a minute ago. Here's basically what government spending is. We've basically taken 20 cents out of every dollar made in America to spend on the federal government. Here's what the Congressional Budget Office is telling us our current path is. Not only does our spending go up, but the size of our government as a share of our economy doubles and triples after that. So when my 3 kids were 6, 7, and 9 years old at my age, the government will be